question that has just been on my mind. And then I'm going to hand things over to you all, so if you all want to just raise hands. I think we can do, we're going to keep this kind of brief so we can get to the movie, but we're going to do 4 questions after this, so be thinking about what you want to ask. But Kim, I have been touting this movie so much because I think it occupies such a fascinating moment in cinematic history, and I don't think that gets talked about enough. And that is the collision of old Hollywood and new Hollywood that this film has in a way that I can't think of any other film inhabiting. I mean, 1969, obviously the year Easy Rider came out. That's the year this film was made. This film stars Dennis Hopper as well. You know, this 1969 is widely regarded as the year that New Hollywood began and Old Hollywood ended, and this movie is literally a collision of the two. I can't even wrap my head around a scene that has John Wayne and Dennis Hopper in it. I can't wrap my head around Henry Hathaway directing all these new Hollywood actors like you and Robert Duvall. So can you speak to us a little bit about that? Were you aware of sort of that phenomenon as it was happening, and how did that play out?
I have to be really truthful to you. I wasn't aware of anything. When I did this movie, it's really true though, because the word collision is very appropriate. There were different characters in different ages and different times for everybody. When I first met Henry Hathaway, who directed this film, I met him in his office, and he was 75 years old at the time. And I just said, well, I was talking to myself as I left, going to the parking lot, and thought, this is gonna be really easy. This is just like being with my grandpa. And the first day on the set, Henry Hathaway was an old prop man. And the first day on the set, he gave me a direction while we were still filming, and I wasn't really used to that. A director that sort of screamed at you off camera to do something like, smile, you know, and I looked up, and he said, what are you doing? You're not supposed to cut, you're not supposed to cut. Only director cuts and it says action, and I said, I'm so sorry, Henry, you just surprised me. And we wrestled in the beginning, and it wasn't like my grandfather, and there were all kinds of stories written about us that we had terrible fights, that we really didn't. And there were stories about John Wayne and myself too, that we didn't get along. And we didn't really speak to each other because we didn't know what to say to each other, but we certainly didn't fight with each other. And I did walk off the set very timidly, and I crept around the little desk I was sitting behind like this, because I just didn't know what he was going to do. And I went to my dressing room, and I could hear him he had come off the set, and I could hear him walking real fast in the gravel outside, and I pushed open the dressing room door, and I said, Henry, do you want to talk to me? And he said, yeah, kid, I really, really want to talk to you. And he came in and he said, you got this on this movie, and this and that, and you got that and this. And I said, I did? Henry, I have no idea about any of those things. And my ex-husband knew how much they were willing to pay me, so he set the deal, and I didn't know anything about it, or what he said, or I didn't even know him. So we were able to sit down with each other, and I said, whatever you do, Henry, just do one thing for me, please. Don't yell at me. And he said, okay. Okay. And he never did. He never yelled at me again. And I had to say a couple of times while we were filming, I would say, on the next take, I would say, Henry, I can hear you back at the camera saying my lines, because he gets so enthusiastic. He would repeat all my lines, and he'd get a little louder, a little louder. He smoked a cigar, you know. it was a wonderful experience, really. When it came time for Robert Duvall to work, in those days they would send an actor to a specific location, and the actor would stay there for about 2 weeks before he ever started working, so he could get used to the place. And actually, we were up 14,000 feet, so it was hard to breathe sometimes. And Henry, the first take that Robert Duvall did was Henry stopped it and said, You're not doing it right. And what you need to do is you need to put your left foot in front, your right foot in back, and kind of just sway like this and do the scene. Well, Bobby Duvall heard that and he just went crazy, you know. That's not the kind of actor he is. And so he went for him, for Henry to punch him. And the Duke broke it up, and Robert said, "Who do you think you are, the fucking Martha Graham of acting?" And so that was just one day. You know, after we wrapped shooting on that picture, I went up and had breakfast with Henry twice a week up at his home. He'd send a car for me. He was the biggest shareholder in Union Oil. And he would send a car for me, and I'd go up and have breakfast with him. And when we finished near the end of shooting, he was 75 and he wasn't well, and he was directing from lying on a couch. But there's other stories, and they're not coming to mind. And I know there's a gentleman out here that Robbie Henson, that I've told many stories to. Robbie, can you think of any story that I've told you? No.
Well, you did say that John Wayne sort of showed some respect to you when he pulled you into a photograph.
Yes, thank you. They were having a photo session on the Paramount lot one day. And it was a photo of Yves Montand was in it, and Barbara Streisand, and Rock Hudson, and Clint Eastwood, somebody I'm missing. So I was sitting on a stoop at the studio. I was watching all these people, and the Duke stepped out of the shot and came up and put his hands out to me and lifted me up and walked me back in and put me in the center of the picture, which was really, really nice of him to do.
Audience questions. Do we have some? Oh, okay, right there.
So we have seen Mattie Ross portrayed both by you and Hetty Steinfeld.
Yes.
We've seen John Wayne, Rooster Cogburn, and we've also seen Jeff Bridges' Rooster Cogburn. What's your opinion on the way, I guess, how Westerns have evolved from the lighthearted, bonanza, Gunsmoke, True Grit, to the now Hell or High Water, No Country for Old Men? It's gotten darker, more violent and gruesome. What's your opinion on, I guess, the evolution of that?
Well, it's gotten more real, and I think when True Grit was made, that was the beginning of motion pictures making a choice to be real. I thought Haley was just wonderful in that movie. I think that movie's just wonderful. The Coen brothers are no slouchers. They are very gifted and have great taste. And they really were committed to the book. And the book is a beautiful book. It's required reading in a lot of schools in the 4th grade. And it's just a different season, different people, different actors, different takes. you know. I think the Coen brothers always make a good movie, and I thought she was wonderful in it.
Thank you. Next, right here.
I was wondering about it. Was there a lot of tension between John Wayne and Dennis Hopper, with Dennis Hopper being, counterculture in that sort of scene?
Yes. Yes. Dennis Hopper has been in every one of Henry Hathaway's movies. Henry always hired him. None of that tension came out on the set. They just stayed away from each other. I believe there's a scene where there's Dennis and myself and John Wayne. And everybody was very professional, just nobody spoke to each other. But it's a violent scene, so there was a lot going on, so we really didn't have the time to speak to each other. But I gotta say, everybody was very polite and very professional. Did I answer that?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah?
You want some drama? I'm sorry.
You want the drama? There were, you know what? There really wasn't any drama, except that moment with Bobby. That was drama. That was real drama. But other than that, and Bobby, I've worked with Bobby before, and Bobby's, I think, one of America's best actors, and is always extremely professional. If you'll watch tonight at the entrance that Bobby Duvall makes, you'll see how a real actor enters a film. Because he just takes up the screen. He's just enormous.
That's a benefit to having the Q&A beforehand. I like that. I meant to say no spoilers, please, but I don't think you're that kind of audience. I saw a hand over here. Yes, right there.
I was just going to ask, what was your toughest scene to shoot that you recall?
The first few days were really tough for me. Since I didn't know I was doing it and was told I was doing it, those first few days to just get grounded and just have some drive and some force and some focus and some energy and be specific. That all was tough for me. I had been sick prior to the movie, and I was wobbly in the beginning, and I certainly can tell the interiors from the exteriors. We did the interiors later on in the film instead of the beginning of the film. And when people say, oh, I saw True Grit, I tend to remember the exteriors instead of the interiors.
I think we have time for one more question. Anybody? Yes.
As far as riding horses and doing things or whatever, what was your background on that?
None.
No.
Absolutely none. I'm terrified of horses. I'm terrified especially of walking behind them. And I would see wranglers just walk right behind them. My stunt woman was 64 years old. And she does all of the riding in this movie. And they made a plaster of Paris of my profile, and she wore it. So when there were any side angles, she was riding, and she could really, really ride, and she helped me up and down hills, and she was wonderful. Polly was her name. And all the wranglers and Polly, they were always there getting me on that horse and getting me off that horse. And they were really, really wonderful. A movie that started very wobbly ended up being a really was hard to leave when it was finished.
Thank you so much for being
Thank
here
you.
with us. It's so